Are you a music maker wanting to get your music synced for TV, film, and ads? Or maybe you're someone who's had one or two sync placements, but you want to start getting those placements much more consistently. Well, my name's Christian Hale, and in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what to focus on and what steps you need to take to start succeeding in sync licensing. If you're wondering who the heck I am and why you should listen to me about any of this, I'm a Billboard charting producer-songwriter right here in Nashville, Tennessee. In addition to my music having hundreds of millions of streams, I've done quite well at the sync game, with my music being licensed for countless ads, promos, trailers, and in-show spots by many of the world's leading brands and networks. On this channel, I'm here to help you do two things: make better music, and if you desire, make more money from your music. So without any further ado, let's get into this video, and I'm going to show you exactly what you need to focus on to start succeeding in sync. All right, as we begin having this conversation, I first want to talk to you a little bit about how sync has changed. You know, this is a conversation in my production, songwriting, and artist circles, and the sync circles that I'm kind of in here in Nashville. I hear all the time, sync has changed, sync has changed. How do you succeed? It's different. So how is sync change? When is sync change? And let's talk about that a little bit. So I would say the main two ways that sync has changed, and I would say this all started in the last few years, and we'll get into why, but sync has just become a little bit more competitive. And I would say that sync has also, with that, become just a little bit more saturated. So what would have maybe caused sync to become a little bit more competitive and saturated in the last few years? Well, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was this awesome thing, or not so awesome thing, in 2020 called COVID. Y'all remember that? I don't remember that. I tried to block that out of my mind. But this thing happened in COVID, especially for the live and touring world, where everybody was sitting at home. You remember that? And artists who maybe historically could make the lion's share of their income on touring thought, oh crap, I can't make money touring, or I can't make money playing shows. What am I going to do to start making money? And these people have smart managers and smart labels, and all of those people kind of collectively said, oh, I know what you should do. There's this thing over here called sync, where you can actually get paid to get your music in TV and film and promos and trailers and ads. You know, we should get your music in some of that. And so guess what? It wasn't just one or two artists or touring people or anyone like that had that idea. It was kind of a whole industry of people that a handful of years ago, in that sort of COVID era and post-COVID era, really kind of made the gold rush and focus to sync. So as somebody that was really in the sync game before COVID, in it during COVID, and has kind of still been playing that game after the fact and has tons of friends in that game, I can verify that this is true. Sync is more competitive, it's more saturated, it's not quite as easy as it was, just to shoot you straight, maybe in the 2017, 18, 19 years pre-COVID. With that too, you know, this is going to sound like a bunch of bad news, but we're going to get to the good news, and we're going to give you the strategies and the tactics that you need to implement, because you still can succeed at sync despite this. But with that too, budgets are down, just generally speaking. And you know, there's a few reasons why. I would say the biggest reason why, especially in the trailer world and the in-show TV and film world, there was this other awesome thing that happened called a writer's strike. Y'all remember that in the last, I don't know, when was that? Last year, earlier this year, whenever it was. There was a writer's strike where all the TV and film show writers said, hey, we're not getting paid enough. And it was this big contract negotiation and standout. So guess what? Shows weren't getting made. And that trickled down all the way to the music supervisors and the companies who are in charge of getting music in TV and film in shows. And so when shows weren't being produced, music supervisors, whose whole livelihood is to, you know, they get paid off of getting songs in shows, in movies, like they didn't have work to do. So a lot of those companies got furloughed, and maybe teams of 5 people became teams of 2 people, and budgets were just down across the board. So, you know, this sounds like a really depressing start to a video, right? Sync's more competitive. It's more saturated because of this awesome thing called COVID, and budgets are down because of this thing called a writer's strike. And, you know, it's also a supply and demand thing, right? Like, if it was a much smaller group of people, relatively speaking, who were in this game, you know, like there was less supplies. The demand was higher, thus you could charge a little more, but now tons of music libraries have entered the marketplace. Online, direct to license, subscription-based sites have entered the game. The quality of that library music that you could get for really cheap has gone up. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, that music that you could get for, you know, $100 a year or a $50 license would have been viewed as that's pretty crappy, but now that stuff's starting to get pretty good. So, like, what does this actually mean? Well, because it's a little more competitive, because it's more saturated, in those earlier days, pre-COVID, and especially in the handful of years beyond that, there was a lower bar just to shoot you straight that you could have for sync. Like, you could sling out some crappy-ish sounding demos that just sort of had a vibe and maybe a generic hook, and it was like, oh yeah, that's cool. And, you know, a brand might pay you a lot of money, potentially tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars for that song. But that's not really the case anymore. Gone are the days, for better or worse, of just slinging out crappy songs and, you know, mindlessly getting those placed. And, you know, you just ride that gravy train over and over and over. The landscape has changed. And again, I see that. I feel that. It's a conversation I have with my licensing reps here in Nashville all the time. It's a conversation I have with my colleagues, songwriters, producers, independent artists that play this game here in Nashville. It's a real thing. The sync landscape has changed, but we're not just here to depress you with that. And if that's cool, give this video a like, subscribe, comment, all the things. We're here to give you some action steps and some strategies and some tactics to overcome this and combat this. But we do have to talk about this because this right here, how sync has changed over the last few years, is going to inform what I'm about to lay out for you and what you should be focusing on. So that's why we're talking about this. So what do we do about it? In my humble opinion, here's exactly what you should do about it. I'm doing this. I've done this. I've seen other friends of mine doing this. Those of us that have already done this are really doubling down on it. Is you should build an artist brand with sync at the forefront of your mind. So what the heck does this mean? Well, we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to give you 5 action steps that you need to take to successfully roll out your artist brand. If you've been around the channel, you've possibly heard me say this before, or if you're new here, I'm about to say it. I think it is the best time in the history of the world to be an independent artist because there's no barriers for distribution of your music. Because what distribution used to mean back in the days when music was selling CDs or vinyl is that you had to go front money and mass produce hundreds of thousands of units and ship it all over the world and get it in Best Buy and Walmart and Circuit City, all those 80s and 90s, early 2000 places. And you probably would have had to have a bank, otherwise known as a label, in order to pull that off. But now you and I can go upload our music to Spotify and Apple Music and Amazon and Pandora, the same exact places where major labels and major label artists can get their music. With that too, the master pays on streaming. And when you sign a record deal to a record label, they own the vast majority of that master. But you, as a normal person like me, like you, like all of us watching this video, there's no barriers for distribution. You can go on DistroKid or any of these distributors, get your music out to the same places the major labels do, and you're not handing over ownership to the label. So you can collect all the money, you know, on average about $3,500 to $4,000 per million streams, where if you were signed to a label, all of that money they would make, not you. You might get a tiny little share of it, but it's the best time in the history of the world with social media, with sync, all of these things to just start building a brand and putting out music. So why should you build a brand? Well, we talked about it a little bit here. It's the best time in the history of the world. There's no barriers for entry for distributing your music. The master pays really well on streaming. And I think the bigger thing with a brand is a brand can weather trends. And I think this one right here is really, really important. You know, in the music industry and the world in general, I see people get really fixated on just chasing trends. In the music industry, a couple of years ago, the big thing was TikTok. You got to get on TikTok. And it wasn't just get on TikTok and you do your own thing. It would be one person would, in Nashville, I feel like the thing was somebody would sit in the car and look sad and, you know, oh, I was so sad the other day, and then so I wrote this song about it, and then they lip sync the song, and everybody would hope they became viral, and maybe that was a really natural and authentic thing for the first handful of people that did that, but then everybody started trying to do their version of that, and everybody chased that trend until a new trend came around, and everybody chased that trend, and I think it is like smart to a degree to be aware of the trends, but I think what's more important than just constantly chasing trends is building a brand because a brand can weather trends. Like, let's look at a brand like Walmart. Walmart was a big box retail store, but then Amazon happened and the internet happened and all these new trends happened. But guess what? Walmart had a brand They built brand, they built trust with their end users that allowed them to survive the changes of trends. They could weather the trends because of their brand. So I don't really know what the future of the music industry is. If I knew, I would, sit here and be a fortune teller and be ahead of the trends and, be sitting on a beach somewhere. But I do know that there is power in building a brand because your brand can withstand trends, withstand the changes that will inevitably happen in the music industry. So what is a brand? Let's define that. We've talked about it a little bit here, but what is a brand? There's a lot of definitions of brands out there. My favorite is probably this one. A brand is a word that reminds you of a story. If it's a positive brand, hopefully it's a positive story. If it's a negative brand, it might be a negative story. To put that to the test, when I say Rolex or Mercedes, just those one words, you probably think of something or someone, a type of person that's maybe much different than when I say Walmart, right? There's association with the word. So what the heck does any of this have to do with sync music, building a brand? Well, what you want to do in order to weather the trends, and because of all of this that we talked about up here, because sync is more competitive, because it's a little more saturated, because budgets are down, and because there are no barriers of entry for distributing your music, and because the master pays really well on streaming and you can make some good money from that, you want to really strategically craft a brand that a listener or end user, that could be music supervisor, when I say end user, people that actually license your music supervisor, company, etc. Craft a brand that a listener or end user associates with a specific thing. Let's just rattle off some pop artists right here. When I say Taylor Swift, you probably think of a certain sound, a certain type of song. That's different than when I say Coldplay. That's different than when I say All American Rejects. That's different than when I say Guns N' Roses. I also see this with the chasing trends thing, and I'm totally guilty of this because I do like to think of myself as versatile, but I think a lot of people think they can do everything. So they want to focus on all these different things, but they don't have clarity on what their secret sauce is. So I want you to craft a brand with sync in mind that the end user, hopefully a company that can write you a big check to sync your music or a music supervisor, associates with a specific thing, because again, that can weather trends and can give you a leg up in this more competitive sync landscape that we're playing in. So how do we do this? I'm going to give you the 5 steps. Do these 5 things and you will build a successful sync brand over time. I guarantee it because I've done it. I've seen friends do it. It will work if you do this just consistently over the course of time. So step number 1, first thing you need to do is you need to begin with the end in mind. All right. So what does begin with the end in mind? What you need to go do is go do research on the types of spots you hope to land. All right, so actually go to iSpot TV, great resource right there, and watch a whole bunch of ads. See what kind of music lands in an Apple commercial or 20 Apple commercials. And is that different than a Target commercial? Is that different than a Walmart commercial? Is that different than a T-Mobile commercial? Go watch a bunch of ads. Go watch in-show placements. Maybe the music you hear in Grey's Anatomy is different than you hear in Selling Sunset. Go watch trailers. Go watch sports. Go watch promos and start to figure out the things that you from watching tens or 50 or hundreds of these things that you see commonly in ads and in-show placements and trailers and sports and promos. Start to find themes in vibes, in tempos, in sonics, in lyrics, in is this a male vocal or a female vocal? Is it what's the specific sound of the vocal? If you begin with the end in mind and do your research with building a brand in mind, this is going to work for you. I see way too many people reverse engineer this and I think get this backwards. They say they want to be inspired. You want to be inspired. I want to make what you want to make. And I think there can be something to that sometimes, but they expect the results of, this song would be perfect for a Google ad, let's say, but they didn't actually go watch any Google ads or listen to what kind of music lands in Google ads. They just created what they wanted to create, but then wanted the end result of doing something really strategically and pointedly. So what you need to go do is begin with the end in mind as you're building the brand. Do your research. And then from there, start figuring out, okay, I listen to a bunch of ad music and I think I could do that really well. And the sports thing, not so much. Or maybe you're someone that listens to a bunch of trailer songs and with what you're naturally good at, or maybe you and somebody else maybe you go hear a bunch of trailer music and you're a producer sitting there watching this right now and you're like, oh, I can make those tracks all day, but I don't have the, let's say, ethereal female vocal I heard in a bunch of trailers I listened to. Well, maybe you call a girl with that ethereal female vocal. So, go listen to a bunch of these, figure out with what works, what you naturally do really well. And from there, what you want to do is step 2, create an EP's worth of high quality. We're going to put emphasis on high quality. We'll talk about quality here in a minute. Create an EP's worth of high quality music. And I underline high quality there. Like we talked about it up here a little bit in the, how sync has changed. It's more competitive or more saturated. Gone are the days of slinging out crappy demos, and I get asked a lot from people when I'm doing one-on-one coaching or when I'm just having these conversations, how important is quality in sync? Like you have to remember this, you're competing against a Lizzo track for a Google spot. So like if you objectively listen to the song that you're pitching, is it as good as the Lizzo song? Is it as good as Sabrina Carpenter Espresso? Like just keeping it real. If you want those big budget spots, that's what you're competing against. So go create an EP's worth of high quality music. So why an EP? Should you create more than that? Should you create less than that? Eventually you want to create much more than an EP's worth of music. But I think an EP, 4 to 5 songs of really high quality, dialed lyric, dialed melodies, dialed production, dialed vocals, like the whole thing sounded really good. And it again is really strategic and focused. If you're doing a sports thing, 4 to 5 sports bangers or 4 to 5 promo bangers, if that's what you're chasing after, or 4 to 5 ad bangers, whatever it is. I think that's a really good place to start. Like it's a good thing that's attainable. It's something to work towards. It's not just one song. I'm just going to keep it real for you. If you go do one song and then want to go start hitting people up, we'll get to actually hitting up people that can pitch your music here in step 5. Spoiler alert, stay tuned for that. One song isn't enough. You need a catalog of music, but I have hundreds. I don't even know how many hundreds, but hundreds of songs that are high quality with great writers, great voices, great artists, and every other person in Nashville and LA and across the world that is doing this at a relatively high level does too. So you need more than one song, but I think 4 to 5 songs is a good starting point to go build your brand and kind of just get it going. Once you get those 4 to 5 songs, you'll have motivation to keep going and continue. But go get 4 to 5 high quality songs. From there, because we're playing a little bit more than just the sync game here, right? We're trying to build a brand that can get you some streams, make that streaming money, and can weather some of the trends that will come and go. I want you to go take some time to make your visuals. What? Yeah, make your visuals, because we're going to put this music out to streaming too. Make your visuals look good. And for this, do nothing more than just go start and look at, if you're doing a sports thing and you find, oh man, these 3 or 4 or 5 artists, tend to land all the sports placements. Go look at their Spotify page. So look at the Spotify pages of successful artists, okay? What does their photography look like? What does their cover art look like? What are their fonts? What are their colors? And what I want you to do in this step is pre-decide all of this. Create brand guidelines. You see me popping up on the screen right here. We recently did this with one of my projects, Outskirts. Outskirts is an unashamed sports hype. Like that is one of my artist projects. I do much more in music than just the Outskirts thing, but Outskirts is my artist project for sports and that kind of weightlifter sports bro vibe. That's what we're here to serve. And you see on the screen right now, our brand guidelines, we pre-decided with the help of a visual creative director who's a beast, what all of our fonts are, what all of our colors are for our next 24 releases. I know that's a lot, but all of this was pre-decided with a lot of strategy based on what I liked, what my collaborator in the project, Brandon, liked. And we pre-decided all of this so that we could have really cohesive and high quality visuals. Because again, we're competing for the attention, the same attention that somebody could pick us or they could pick Imagine Dragons. So we need to do everything possible to captivate them, pull them in, make our stuff look good, make our visuals look good, make our Spotify canvases look good, all of that. So go take a little bit of time to make your visuals look good, cover art, fonts, colors, photography, all of that. From there, and again, this is with sync in mind, I'm not leaving you hanging here, but start growing your streaming. This is a whole probably 1, 2, or 3 videos in and of itself of how to actually release music, but release your music with all of this visual stuff right here, with your socials looking good, with your 4 to 5 bangers that are cohesive, with sync in mind, with whatever you're targeting in mind. go start releasing your music and growing your streaming. There's, like I said, we could spend hours talking about how exactly to do this, but a couple powerful things can happen. One, a little bit incrementally over time, you're going to start making money from your streaming if you do this with intention, with focus. And, a beautiful thing, I've seen it happen in numerous of my own projects. There is a chance, like, as you build a brand, again, something that people associate with something specific, supervisors could hear your song and reach out to you. I think with Outskirts alone, we had multiple Dude Perfect placements, an MLB placement, a FIFA placement, like literally just DMs from music supervisors that our team, our rep didn't even go pitch the stuff to them. The music supervisor just heard our song and was like, oh, this is perfect for what I'm doing. I'm just going to go DM these guys on Instagram. And, they didn't just hear the song and then none of this other stuff was in place. It was like, oh man, like, this is a legit band. Even though we're just two dudes who sit in our studios and make music, we made it look and feel legit. So start growing your streaming again, because we're trying to build a brand that can weather the trends. And because streaming pays really, really well. And just to keep it real with you guys, I have friends here in Nashville who have, made multiple six figures a year off of sync. I've done well in sync. A lot of people I know that have historically killed the sync game are doing this right here. Like, we're still focusing on sync with the types of songs we're making, but we're putting lots of effort on growing streaming. Almost like, like, we're not just making jingles anymore for sync. Not jingles, but you get what I'm saying. We're making legit songs that we're proud of, with a look, with the feel, with the vibe. We're putting it out there like a real band on Spotify, on Apple Music, and we're growing the thing. And we're almost having like a streaming first income, but hopefully serving multiple uses with sync as well. So, how does all of this actually start getting you syncs? Well, now we get to step 5. Only at this point, after you've began with the end in mind and done your research and created your EP's worth of high quality music and made your visuals look dialed and started putting out music and growing your streaming, only once you've done all of that, now you can start reaching out to sync reps, libraries, and music supervisors. Maybe you're watching this like, yo, Christian, that's a lot of work. Yeah, it is a lot of work. Remember the first thing we talked about? Sync's more competitive and sync's more saturated because of that awesome thing called COVID. And I'm just keeping it real with you guys. Like, as somebody that plays this game and knows lots of people that have played this game and done well in it, it's just more competitive now than it used to be a few years ago. So you need to do all of this stuff before you reach out to music libraries, before you reach out to sync licensing reps, before you DM music supervisors. Why? Because you want to stand out for the right reasons. My primary sync rep here in Nashville, she says it, just one person, one middleman who her job is to pitch to music supervisors, ad agencies, all of that. She says at any given time, she has 50 unread submissions for people that she doesn't know, cold outreaching to her, hitting her up saying, I want you to rep my music. 50, one lady, one company at one time. And some of those people might have really great music and visuals and all that, but some of them won't. So if you're going to be one of the 50 that's just hitting that person up, you want to be the person that stands out. And, it can be this really like interesting thing psychologically where the power when you reach out at step 5 here, if you've done all these other things that we've talked about in this video, the whole dynamic and the whole vibe can go from, I need something from you, person. You reaching out from a place of desperation and a place of need of, oh, music supervisor, I need you to license my song. I need you to hear my music. Hey, music library, I need you to take on my songs. Hey, sync licensing rep, third-party rep, I need you to hear my music. Like, I'm putting all my eggs in your basket. No, from there, it changes the whole dynamic from that to, hey, I'm this person who can now bring value to you because I've done my research and created strategic music and have more than just one song. You have that good EP as a starting point. It's not just, here's my one song. Oh my gosh, like, I want to metaphorically win the lottery and this needs to change my life company. No, I have a good starting point, a good baseline volume of music, and hopefully, again, way more than 4 to 5 songs in time. And I have good visuals. And when you Google me and look me up and look up my Spotify page, like, I have some streams and listeners. It takes the whole conversation from, I need something from you, almighty licensing rep, to the licensing rep saying, hey, like, this person is bringing me value. they're giving me something that I really want to work with. I'm excited. If Ryan Tedder and One Republic came to any third party licensing rep, they probably wouldn't even blink. They would take them on in a heartbeat. Why? Because they're bringing them a lot of value with the brand that they've created. And you want to be the person, even when you're just starting out, even when you're not that superstar artist, that's always bringing value to the people you're working with and always standing out in a good way. So don't skip steps 1 through 4 and just go to step 5. Lots of people do that. And guess what? Those people are the people that more than likely complain that, oh, no one ever writes me back. No one ever hears my music. I sent an email to a music supervisor and my song never got placed. And again, to keep it real with you, even once you've done steps 1 through 4 and then done step 5, and then if you are fortunate enough to get those 4 to 5 songs, your EP or more, into a music library or in the hands of music supervisors or in the hands of a licensing rep, it's gonna take time. It will take time to get syncs. Why? Because sync is more competitive now. It's more saturated now because of COVID. I'll reverse back to COVID. I'm just keeping it real with you. I live this. I see this. I've done songs that like objectively are home runs. Like I could play them for you. They're great. Everybody on my teams that have heard them are like, oh my gosh, this is a grand slam. This should be a huge ad song for blah blah blah. And I've even had music supervisors that have heard the songs that are like, oh my gosh, this is so perfect. The production, the voice, the songwriting, all of that's so good. And guess what? That was 2 or 3 years ago, and those songs haven't made $1 from sync just because it's competitive and it's saturated. And maybe it's just not the perfect song for the perfect spot. But maybe 2 or 3 more years can go by and the right need will arise for the right song. And it all just kind of works out at the end. But you want to build a catalog of music, and more importantly than a catalog of music, a brand that encompasses and envelops that catalog of music to where all of your eggs aren't in the sync basket. So again, we're not just building something that's so dependent on, oh my gosh, I wrote one song, it has to get a sync, it has to get a placement. No, we're building a brand with streaming revenue attached to it that then can hopefully sync as well. So this is the game now from someone that lives this, breathes this, does this, and has tons of friends that do it as well. You need to begin with the end in mind, create your EP's worth of music, make your visuals look good, grow your streaming, and then and only then start reaching out to the reps, the music libraries, and the music supervisors. If you stuck around to the end and you thought this was helpful, give this video a like, subscribe, comment, let me know what the most helpful part of this video was. And if you're still with me here, I do want to let you know about a special opportunity and an offer that I have for you where we can actually do this, you and I, together. I have a new program that I'm offering that's actually a 2-day VIP experience with me here in the studio in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a 2-day thing, and the first day is you'll come over here to my home studio and we'll bang out your strategy together. We'll do the research together. I'll listen to your music, give you feedback on your music, figure out what you do best. If maybe you have some songs, but you're stuck on how to level them up yourself, we'll sit here in my studio in front of my PMCs over coffee together and do that. We'll come up with your plan to make your visuals look good and what types of songs to focus on. I'll give you feedback on the whole thing. I'll give you in-depth strategies and pull the curtain back on how to grow your streaming, how I've done that, and show you how to reach out to sync reps and libraries to win, to succeed. We'll do that here in person. Then we'll go out to lunch with people in the industry, in the sync industry, personal friends of mine here in Nashville. We'll spend the afternoon together over coffee, putting a bow on it. Then the next day, I'll actually set you up to write with some of the top producers and songwriters in the sync game here in Nashville, Tennessee. So that's a new thing I'm offering, the 2-day VIP experience. If that sounds like something you're interested in, head over to my website, christianhale.co/coaching. There's an application at the bottom of the page for this, so definitely go check that out if that sounds like something you're interested in. Fill out the application there. I hope this video brought you tons of value. Here's to making better music and making more money from your music, and we'll see you back here on the channel real soon.